Look around you and imagine not having access to energy for cooking, lighting, heating, and other essentials. Dr. Scott Tinker, chairman of the Switch Energy Alliance, explained to us that this is normal life for about 1/3 of the people on the planet. We call it energy poverty.
Well, thanks for that nice introduction. I'm going to talk today just a little bit about poverty and a sustainable transition. And really this conversation about whether or not this is a dilemma or an opportunity. And we've all seen dilemmas when we begin to think about energy and the environment and the economy for sure. So is it energy or the environment? An apparent choice or an apparent dilemma? Is it clean or dirty, or is it climate or the economy? And these go on and on and on. And I wonder if these are real dilemmas, if these are real choices, or if they're created more as false choices. Ones that are more nuanced, that require more information and more data. I only have a short time today. Normally I'm overwhelming you with data, but today I really want to talk about these three big areas: energy, the environment, and the economy, and how they play together, and what these choices or false choices perhaps look like. When we think about the environment, there are really four big pillars: the land, the water, the air, and of course the atmosphere and climate change. When we talk about the economy, we look at poverty and competition and growth and other things, and energy poverty plays a major role here in economic poverty. And energy can be divided in many ways. I've, for simplification, called it fossil fuels and nuclear and renewables here. So again, lots of different components coming to bear, and they're surrounded by legal and social and political systems. So it's not simple. To oversimplify is to underestimate the complexity of this engagement, if you will. They're very interactive, these spheres of energy and the economy and the environment. And they have to be thought of that way. So when we come back to these interactive systems and the social, legal, political systems that surround them, on the environmental side, many different groups play, but the NGOs and the academies, universities play strongly in environmental activism and advocacy, environmental justice, big terms these days. So they're playing strongly here. Advocacy and activism are powerful tools, but being part of the academies myself and having been in industry and governments, whenever you're advocating for something or even an activist, your objectivity, well, you have to think about that. If I'm advocating for this, am I truly objective? And this is across all these different spheres. As I come into the economy, I think about governments. Governments really play strongly in the economy, in jobs, in growth, in providing for the welfare of the people. And again, there are different forms of government, as we all know. We're facing and looking at choices right now in the United States, where I'm from, but we see this all over the world. And having been in 65 countries, I've been lucky to see a variety of interactions in government spheres that are very powerful. And then finally, on the energy side, industry is a big part of that. The supply of energy, the delivery of the energy, and making it available and affordable and reliable and sustainable or secure. And those are four big themes that aren't easy to balance. No form of energy is affordable, available, reliable, and sustainable. It just doesn't exist, okay? So you're balancing portfolios of different energy choices along the way. So here we sit in this sphere, and I call that overlap space the radical middle. I've talked about that for a long time. It's radical because sometimes it feels a little lonely in there, but it's really where these overlap, where the data come to bear, where we have civil but challenging discourse and discussions about these topics, and where we compromise to try to address some of the big issues of the day in this overlap space. It takes critical thinking. And what I mean by that is looking at the pros and the cons of different issues, all sides of an issue. It's too easy to say it's good or bad, it's clean or dirty. It sounds good, and we wish it were so, but it's not. It's too easy to say that. Critical thinking requires that we look at that nuance, and it's so important when we're having these conversations. So energy and the environment and the economy, that radical middle sits there, and at times it feels particularly in Western Europe and the United States, like it's shrinking. The polarization continues, and it depends on your news feeds and what you listen to, but there's a lot of positive forward motion out here. In fact, many things that I see are pulling this together more, particularly globally, making it larger, and that's where we need to be. So what does it look like on the environment side? What are the big outcomes? Well, we need to reduce the impacts of all forms of energy on the atmosphere, the air, the land, and water. And all forms of energy have environmental impact, some strongly on the atmosphere, to be sure. When you combust fossil fuels, particularly coal and oil, and even to some degree natural gas, you have CO2 emissions, methane. You have on the air SOx and NOx and mercury and particulates. Okay, so these are real atmospheric and air challenges. But what about nuclear? What do you do with the radioactive waste when that very dense form of energy generates electricity with no emissions at the source? But there's a nuclear waste challenge, okay, or a nuclear fuel challenge, spent fuel challenge. What about solar and wind? Sure, the sun is renewable and the wind, but the solar panels and the wind turbines and the large-scale batteries to back them up, those aren't renewable. Those are mined. All the products to make those are mined. They come from the earth, and then they're manufactured, and then they get disposed, and because it's sun and wind are a lower density form of energy, it takes a lot of stuff to collect them. So this is a mining and land use and landfill disposal challenge on the environment. All forms of energy have impact on the environment, and they all do positive things. On the economy side, energy poverty is vital, and our newest film, Switch On, speaks to this. It's access to energy. It's energy equality. Okay, so electricity. A billion people in the world don't have any electricity today. And then there are those who have electricity wires going by, but they can't afford it. They're under the grid, if you will. And many are cooking indoors with biomass of some kind, wood, coal, dung, and over 2 billion people in the world today cooking like this. So how do we lift them from poverty, energy poverty, and really economic poverty, and begin to get access so that we raise the level for everyone in the world? And that's what our film Switch On is about. But you also have to underpin and sustain healthy economies today globally, and energy does that. So as you look at energy itself, what are the parts of energy that are going to allow you to reduce the impacts on the environment and sustain healthy economies and lift people from poverty? What are some of the big knobs to turn? Well, clean up fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are vital for the health of the global economy. It's still 84 to 85% of the world's energy. We're not going to get rid of them, and really, nor should we. I'd say that again, nor should we. It's not a fuel issue. It's an environmental impact issue. So there are ways to continue to clean up fossil fuels, particularly coal, replacing it with natural gas and power generation. Natural gas produces CO2. How do you capture and sequester that CO2? The United States built its economy on coal for electricity. So did Germany. So did England. So is China. And so will and are Vietnam and India. That's not going to change. How do you transition to some other choices? A coal to gas choice has remarkable effects on the environment, including the reduction of CO2 emissions. Not perfect by any means, but the reduction of CO2 emissions. Efficiency matters. The more efficient use of energy lowers the impacts across the board. Nuclear matters, particularly for climate change. A zero-emissions, dense form of highly efficient energy matters, whether it's small modular reactors or large nuclear reactors. China are building many, many nuclear reactors today. I think India will give this hard thought. Geothermal is starting to make a comeback, if you will. It's always been there, but it's a scalable, distributed, clean form of energy. Hydrogen, transportation matters. Liquids are dense. That's why we use gasolines and diesels. Electric vehicles make sense in some settings, but they have a huge environmental impact in terms of the batteries themselves, the mining, the manufacturing, the disposal, literally trillions of batteries to go electrify the vehicle fleet. What about fuel cells? What's their role? So combustion engines, fuel cells, batteries, that portfolio of choices is important. And finally, distributed renewables For the billion people in the world that we show and switch on in parts, there's no roads, there's no power lines, there aren't pipelines. The only first energy is DREs, distributed renewables. And that begins to get access to a more modern economy, a more modern world in many ways. And it's not just the land for farming or the home or the clothing. It's bigger things. It's access to education because of lighting. It's access to refrigeration and freezers for medical supplies and vaccines. Women are often disadvantaged in energy-starved regions. They go for the water. They're cooking indoors. They don't go to the schools as much. So rights and freedom of women and equality there. Immigration and migration, major energy and economy-related issues. There's so many population growth. Actually, the correlation between education underpinned by energy, and fertility rates is very strong. So looking at population, there's major issues here that are related to this overlap space. And we have to think critically as we move forward. If we do that, if we don't try to make it black and white, energy or the economy, climate, or the economy, or fossil fuels or renewable energies, these choices don't work in the sense of sustainability. They paint a simple false picture, okay? Bringing them together, the economy, reducing impacts on the environment, that's a sustainable transition, but it's going to take nonpartisan, it's difficult, but nonpartisan energy education and critical thinking. So I'm very engaged in this, and I encourage us all to be. I want to end with a thought. This comes from Hans Rosling, who has passed now, but he's your neighbor in Norway. He was from Sweden, a medical doctor, and wrote a wonderful book called Factfulness. And near the end, I pulled this single sentence out of the middle of a paragraph near the end. Data must be used to tell the truth, not to call to action, no matter how noble the intentions. I want to think about that, how prescient that is how important to tell the truth with data to the extent we can, not to advocate or go active that way, but truly to seek the truth in this radical middle. And if we do that together, I think we're going to have a remarkable positive future. So I look at this as an opportunity. I don't see it so much as a dilemma. It's an opportunity for us all to come together and make a difference. Thank you.